This is Tucker here with Tuck's Rods, and today we're going to get started on this Roadmaster / 57 Chevy conversion project. And if you're watching the last episode, we ended up getting the old 57 here, taking off the original chassis. So today we pulled the old Roadmaster in, we're going to trim it down, and heck, I got my old hot rod buddy in here, old Roger. He's one of my drag racing / hot rod buddies, and he came by today, and he's going to help trim this Roadmaster down. So we're going to get started on that and see what happens. So here's the Roadmaster in the state she's in right now. We took the doors and the body's been lifted off of it. So we're going to go ahead and keep stripping her down a little bit, and then we can start getting the measuring tape out and get her cut down and trimmed up and see if we can get the old 57 set down on there. So this will be the last view of the Roadmaster in this form before she loses a few more pounds. Well, I'm carving away on the Roadmaster here, and I'm working on the Firewall at the moment, so I'll kind of show you what we got going on. I'm not sure exactly how much of this Firewall or toe board I'm going to use. I'm going to try to at least use some of the toe board because it kind of has the same angle up, and it's looking like with the measurements that I can come up with, it's going to be pretty close. The Firewall on the flat part here is going to be pretty much right in line with where the 57 Firewall is. And so I'm cleaning up this area up here where the old windshield comes clear up over the dash. So I'm thinking that I might be able to go up a little higher with the Firewall. I'm not sure. So I was trimming away with the cutoff wheel and the Sawzall, but I've gotten down to where this lower panel has a whole bunch of insulation and stuff that's glued onto the Firewall on the underneath side. So I'm kind of scared about catching it on fire or, cut some wires that I might use. So I'm going to go ahead and try to see if I can get it peeled apart with an air hammer. All right, now that we got that piece out of there, you can sure see a lot better. You can actually see the old lt1 completely in here, and it's not quite as curved as you'd think. This Firewall's, heck, I don't know, I might be able to go on up a little higher, I don't know. I kind of wanted to keep the stock 57 looking Firewall when I'm all done with it, so I don't know, we'll keep going here. And I'm going to try to pull this air conditioning stuff out and save it just in case. It'd be nice if I could incorporate that up in there and save me some money in the future as far as heating and air, because I'd have my air conditioning and heat with the heater core, because it looks kind of compact. I took a measurement with it underneath the 57 dash there, and it's going to be close, but if I could get it to all sit in there, I think I might try to use it. So I'll keep you posted on the next step. Thought I'd show a few of them people out there that's just getting started in messing with this stuff. Most people will know this, that's dealt with these cars and everything, but on how to pull off like these spot welded pieces that you don't need any longer. So what I usually do is I just use an oversized drill bit, come along and find the little dimples, drill them out a little bit, and then come along with an air hammer. You probably, at least with me anyways, I never usually get all of them, but when you start hammering on it, you'll find the ones that you missed, and it'll they'll show themselves when you start trying to pull the panel off of there. They make little spot weld drills that work pretty good. They kind of look like a little hole saw, but the cheaper ones don't last very long, so I just usually use the drill bit. right, now that we got all this trimmed up some, we can kind of get a lot better idea with some reference points here to measure off of. So as of right now, the leading edge of the firewall right here on this Roadmaster in relationship to the spindle center point is right on the money with the leading edge of the 57 Firewall right here to the spindle location on a 55, 6, or 7. So knowing that, this dimension from the outside of here to the outside, you know, on the Roadmaster here is exactly 60.5 inches on both of them. So if a guy wanted to and wasn't too concerned with what the firewall looked like, if he's wanting to go with the newer style firewall, a guy could actually come inside, literally just inside to this edge here on the 57s to the this little lip, and cut that out, and then come across and then just add that part of the firewall of the Roadmaster in there. It'd be the easiest way to get it going, because you could pretty much leave the brake booster and the steering column, I mean, real close into the location that they're currently in. I'll walk around here to the other side and kind of show what's going on there. Because with the steering column location on the Roadmaster, it's exactly 1/2 of an inch towards the center more than a 57. So to get your column to come out in the Trifive location to where it would center directly under your instrument cluster, all you'd have to do is you could actually slot you some holes and slide the steering column over 1/2 of an inch towards the driver's side, and that actually wouldn't interfere with anything, and you'd have enough give in the little ball joint down here on the steering shaft, and the rag joint should flex enough to not cause any interference. And on the 57, if you use this stock firewall, you would cut in approximately to about right here where that lip is, where the hood hinges mount that I was showing you. And then that would allow you to use the part of the firewall that mounts your hood on the 57, and then add all this Caprice or Roadmaster style firewall the rest of the way in. Now the only thing I've seen, you might have to relocate this brake booster by slotting the holes maybe 1/2 of an inch going towards the passenger side, but with moving the steering column to the driver's and the booster to the passenger side, there shouldn't be any interference at all with anything. It should be a pretty easy move. But what I'm thinking about doing on mine, and actually if you're doing a 55 or 56, you wouldn't have to do anything with the brake booster, because the hood hinge location is actually 4 or 5 inches wider than a 57. So the hood hinges would be out here a ways, and there wouldn't be any interference at all. But by looking at it, there might not be anyhow. You might not have to move this booster. It might just be real close. So that's an option for some guys out there. And I'm not sure if the older Caprice style, like 80s models, firewalls are much different or not. I'm going to be doing one of those too and comparing on them. But what I think I'm going to do is go ahead and use my stock firewall, because I wanted to. I'm eventually going to put the original inner fenders out of the 57 and cross member in. When I do that race with the Mustang, I'm probably going to leave it like this, run it with these inner fenders here in core support. I'll just put my fenders on there. But as far as the inside goes, I found a little bit of rust over here on the toe boards on the passenger side there, and I think it's due from that air conditioning drain. It looked like it was about in location where that drain came down and ran that condensation down on the firewall there. So I'm either going to patch those two small spots up, or I might, fabricate a toe board on a 57 and just start from the lower flat part of the floor and go back. I haven't decided yet, but I just wanted to kind of show everybody this firewall before I cut it all off of there, because it is probably a pretty good option if a guy didn't care about having a, Caprice or Roadmaster firewall. And you'd actually, if you didn't want to run the lt1, you've got plenty of clearance here if you wanted to run a big block or something, it'd be a direct bolt in this chassis. So just for guys to keep that in mind also. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this down a little bit more, run it over to the neighbors, and try to get one more weight on it while it's still under its own power, so I can see exactly where we're at with all the goodies that I've trimmed off of it so far. Well, we got the Roadmaster cut down quite a little bit more here, and I was getting ready to fire it up and take it over to the neighbors and get a weight on it after I unload all the garbage off the back of it there, and it wouldn't run. And at first I was thinking it was something to do with the VATS value system, key security system. And I traced through some of those wires thinking, well, maybe I unplugged something wrong and I didn't get it put back. But kept going through everything and couldn't find anything that would cause it not to run. So I decided to look into it a little further towards this OptiSpark setup. And after looking at it a little closer, it looked like it had been leaking a little bit around the water pump. So I went ahead and replaced the water pump and the OptiSpark distributor on it. And I went ahead and did a video on that, but I didn't want to include it on this since it doesn't really pertain to the 57 Roadmaster swap. So I'm going to put that video out after this one for just the guys that are interested in finding out a little bit more about the OptiSpark water pump installation if you haven't done that before. So if you're not planning on using LT1 or don't care to hear any of that, you don't even have to bother watching that, because that next video won't really have much to do with the swap. So we're going to get this thing fired up and back it out and get everything cleaned off of it, and I'm going to run over and get a weight of it, because this will be the last that she pulls herself around before the goose is sitting on top of here, because I'm going to have to go ahead and take the rest of the firewall down with the column and everything else on there. Well, we got the Roadmaster cleaned off, so we're getting ready to go get one last weigh in while she's in the Roadmaster form. Got to try to get all the mud off the tires here. It's kind of had a lot of precipitation here a week or so ago, so get her all cleaned off before we go very fast. Well, that's kind of disappointing. I guess it says 2720. That's still heavier than what I was anticipating. All right, well, I got the old Roadmaster back here at the place. I'm gonna have the old lady see if she can film one more smokie with the old girl before we have the old goose strapped to her back. I'm currently underneath the old Blue Goose here, cleaning up some of this excess material. This was part of the shock area of the floor that's inside the trunk area. And I went ahead and left it when I pulled it off the chassis. I didn't know how much extra support I was going to need, but it seems to be pretty rigid. So I'm going to go ahead and I took the air hammer, went ahead and knocked loose all those spot welds. And we're going to come around and clean up all these other areas where the original trunk was actually spot welded onto the inner wheel wells. So we're going to get all that cleaned up. And what I did notice over here on the passenger side, when we did the quarter panel, there was that little flap area that holds the bottom of the quarter. I did a rust repair on it, but I should have went ahead and left it off because it actually comes towards the inside of the trunk area about 1.5 inches. I don't know if you can kind of see that or not. So that's going to interfere when we go to sitting it down over the Roadmaster floors. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that and finish cleaning up all this area where this is all pinch welded onto the inners. After I do that, we're going to try to set it down over the Roadmaster floors to get a kind of a rough idea where I need to start trimming away on it. Alright, so we got that inner shock tower removed on this thing. And all the pinch weld areas over the wheel wells and inside the trunk area has been cleaned up. And in case anybody's wondering why she has the Blue Goose nickname, it's because if you can see the floor here, it's just stuff everywhere. And here about 3 weeks ago, the old lady came into the shop and she says, "Man, this car is the worst thing you've ever had in here." She says every time it goes out, we clean up and you bring it back in and it looks just the same, like we've never done anything. She says it almost looks like you locked a bunch of chickens or some geese up in here and they just shit all over the floor. And I said, well, we're just going to go ahead and nickname her the Blue Goose. So that name kind of stuck with it. So that's what we're going to call her. And as far as the firewall area here, we went ahead and cut the toe boards out because they were awful rusty on this thing. We're going to try to use the toe boards off of the Roadmaster. So we kind of got a starting area here. I think it's pretty close to where I want to attach them from that car. So about the only thing we have left to clean up on this before we set it down over the Roadmaster for its first test fit is the areas there on the lower quarters and the inside there. But basically all I have left here is right in here, this inner area. It's actually supposed to have like a little C-channel that matches those outer rockers over here. I don't know if you can kind of really see it. It's not real clear. That little lip right there. So what I'm going to do, since this is pretty rusty on both sides, I've got a homemade brake that I'm going to dig out and go ahead and bend me up a couple C-channels that I can cut this out right along here and put that in before we set it down on the Roadmaster. So that's the only thing I've really got left to do before we do our first test fit on it. And on a side note, I was in here working the other afternoon and I heard this hell of a commotion going on outside. So I went running out there, and hell, it was my nephew out there trying to rattle my cage. He was out there in that Mustang that's going to be going up against the old Blue Goose. So before I could get a real good picture of him taking off smoking them, I pulled my phone out, took a little bit of a video, but what it is, it's an old 64 or 5 or 6 or something like that Mustang with a Chevy powered, or Chevy V8 in it. So I went ahead and went over to his place and did a quick walk around. So I'm going to leave this video here with, you know, a picture of it and what I'm going to be going up against, because we got, like I said, a $50 grudge match against the old Goose. So hopefully here in a couple weeks we'll get him out there, and I'm hoping the Goose puts him on the shelf, but we'll have to wait and see on that. And the video that's going to be coming on after this one is going to be on the OptiSpark distributor setup and the water pump. I just did a short video explaining how to replace those if there's anybody out there that hadn't done it before. But it's not going to have a whole lot of content as far as the Roadmaster 57 swap, so you might want to skip that if you're not interested in the lt1 power plants. And the only other thing I was going to mention, I'm going to try to get the next video after that, which is going to be this body going down over the Roadmaster frame. I'm going to try to get to it before the end of the week, because I had a pretty good delay on this, the gap between this video here and the one before, because I had trouble with that OptiSpark and a couple other things going on. So I want to thank everybody that's subscribed and has been watching all these videos and left comments. It's been great, and I appreciate the comments too a lot. So I'll leave here and I'm going to show that Mustang, and we'll catch up with you on the next video. Well, here's the old Mustang that the nephew has. It's going to be going up against the old Blue Goose here in a couple weeks. It's Chevy powered, and I don't know, we're going to have to check her out and see if the old Blue Goose will take her out. But I think it's a 65. And like I said, it's got I think it's like 350 Chevy in it. So it ought to be a pretty interesting race.